Could I too acknowledge the traditional owners and thank them for their continuing stewardship, and thank Shirley and Phil for organising tonight, and acknowledge I'm here as Therese Gambaro's guest. She kindly let me into her electorate. And acknowledge the courage of Therese at the last election, and Warren Ench, and the political consequences of that I'll touch on later, but also at the ballot box, where they were preferenced last by various parties because of her coming out, so to speak, in support of marriage equality. Look, I was the chair of the Social Policy and Legal Affairs Committee that conducted an inquiry into marriage equality, the two bits of legislation. A lot of my views are in the preface to that report. You can talk to Shelley or Rodney if you want to get my views about marriage equality. Needless to say, I support it. The inquiry had the largest number of responses in the history of the Parliament since Federation, over 260,000 responses, I think, from memory. And unfortunately, I think that it was from people passionately for change and people passionately against change. And in a way, I'd say, as someone that heard the evidence from both, neither the twain shall meet. There was not a lot of movement of people. That was the reality of that inquiry. But I believe, as the Crosby-Textor data shows, most Australians didn't make a submission to that inquiry because they just get on with their life, and most Australians will embrace change. Now, I'm glad I was able to agree with some of the things Tim Wilson said tonight. It's been a while, but I did disagree with you, Tim, where you said that conservatism, I actually think that conservatism is all about stopping change. That's my understanding of politics. Not detracting from my relationship with Theresa or individual views of people on the other side, Labor or Liberal. And I don't see it with respect to Christine. I will say a few things about your brother, because the reality is, after that marriage equality debate, when people like Therese came out and expressed their views, and Warren Ench and Kelly O'Dwyer, well, after the federal election when Tony Abbott became the Prime Minister, those three people all received absolutely nothing in terms of promotion, despite 15 years of experience as a politician by Therese and Warren, and Kelly O'Dwyer obviously being one of the smartest people going around in terms of the new wave of politicians. So it is important what our politicians say and what our leaders say, whether it be Julia Gillard or Tony Abbott. Obviously I see marriage equality as just being pretty basic. It is about equity, it is about family. I think committed monogamous relationships are one of the building stones of a society. Not the only building stone, but an important building stone, which is why we should let that very important sign and symbol of the state recognising people that are committed to each other marry each other. Obviously, religious institutions, those 8% of Australians that go off to church every weekend, or some sort of a religious establishment every weekend, that's another debate for them in their institutions. And I should also particularly thank the Uniting Church for having us here tonight, and commend Peter for his speech as well. But it's great to be able to have this speech in an establishment like the Uniting Church. It sounds like an important symbol of where we're going as a society. Look, because of what other people have touched on, I think I would be more useful in the Q&A part, but I did want to give you my little bit of political advice. I've been a candidate for about 10 years. I remember that vote that will take place tomorrow, that from 10 years ago, that joint ticket from Mark Latham and John Howard. I remember, because I was a candidate at the time. Now I'm actually an experienced politician. It's hard to say it out loud and admit it, but that is the reality. I'm in my third term. So I can tell you a few things, and I bring the bias of the House of Representatives, But I think in terms of winning this debate, it has to take place in the House of Representatives. If you live in Teresa's electorate and you come and talk to me about an issue, I won't be that interested. That's just the reality of House of Representatives. My borders, apart from national topics, and my role as a Shadow Parliamentary Secretary to the Shadow Attorney General, basically House of Representative people listen to their constituents particularly. Senators, I think, can often listen to none of their constituents and say that we represent everybody. But that's my bias as a House of Reps person. So you need to get involved with the political party that you're interested in. Work it out geographically, and also where you could get involved, and then go along and talk to your House of Representatives people, because it does take courage to speak up, and as I said, there are consequences when people do speak up. So you need to, and if you're in my electorate, well, obviously there's no need to spend time trying to convince me. You need to find another electorate and someone that might be prepared to listen. And you need to get involved, and whatever political party you're prepared to join or become involved in, if you're not prepared to sign on the dotted line, get involved with it and go and talk to those people. And I've seen how hard it is to walk the corridors of Canberra looking for a receptive ear, and have Rodney and Shelley tell me 10 times how hard it is, and how they've had some PFLAG parents crying because of the response from people, my colleagues. People, those 225 other elected representatives down there. Now, obviously, we are not that 72% yet. It takes time for the values of society to translate into elected representatives. And especially, as I said, I disagree with Tim. I think Conservatives is all about stopping change, and it's not all about freedom and fairness. That's not the case either. I think it's all about protecting power and privilege. That's my understanding of Conservative parties, what they do. Progressive parties, whatever you might think a progressive party is, and obviously the Labor Party is a centre-left party, have a different approach. So you need to get involved and try and move people as quickly as you can, and make sure they hear the personal stories, but also they understand where your voting intentions are, and where your neighbours' voting intentions are, and where the community groups you represent are. But you've heard from a lot of people tonight. I think I'll be more useful in terms of answering questions politically. As I said, if you're interested in my views beyond what I've articulated, the preface to my the Marriage Equality Report, the legislation can be found online. Thanks for the chance to speak to you tonight.